Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 6:30, so could we all just settle down, please? Get your glasses of water, and we will commence the meeting. So thank you, everyone, and welcome to the Central Lancashire Strategic Planning Joint Advisory Committee. Item number 1, we need to appoint, as we always do, a chair. So can I have a nomination, please, of the chair? Thank you, Alistair. And a seconder, please. Right, seconders, Andrew. Thank you both. Appreciate that. Right, vote of hands to confirm that I'm okay to chair the meeting. Okay, thank you. You know, it's carried. Okay, so welcome and introduction. Let's do the formalities first. Good evening. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending this meeting of the Central Lancashire Strategic Joint Advisory Committee on Tuesday, the 20th of June, 2023. For those who don't know me, my name is Councillor James Flannery, and I will be chairing this meeting. The public are reminded that the first part of this meeting is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube. If you are joining using via Microsoft Teams and you wish to speak, please raise your hand as indicated. I'll begin with some housekeeping. Please can you ensure that mobile phones are either switched off or turned onto silent mode. We are not anticipating a fire alarm drill, but if the alarm does go off, you should leave via the fire exit at the wheel or cross rooms, which are either side of us, and wait on the car park to the rear of the building. So, with a few new faces in the room, following the recent elections, can I ask everyone to kindly introduce themselves, please, starting on my left. So, Lizzie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Lizzie Hindle, Head of Planning and Enforcement at South Ribble.
Ben Story, Democratic Service Officer.
Councillor Alan Cullens, Leader of the Opposition at Chorley, but representing the County Council here.
Yeah, Councillor Craig Southern for Crossley Maudsley, Action South.
Andy Ascroft, Senior Public Health Practitioner at Lancashire County Council.
Stephanie Duxbury, Public Health Practitioner at Lancashire County Council.
Good evening, members. I'm Dr. Sakti Karunanidhi, Director of Public Health in Lancashire County Council.
Councillor Alistair Morwood, Executive Member, Planning and Development, Chorley Council.
Councillor Elaine Stringfellow.
Alistair Bradley, Leader of Chorley Council.
I'm Emma Price. I'm the Planning Policy Assistant for the Central Lancashire Local Plan.
Carolyn Williams, Planning Policy Manager, Preston City Council.
Chris Haywood, Director of Development and Housing, Preston City Council.
Good evening. Javed Iqbal, Chair of Planning at Preston, representing David Barrow, our Cabinet Member. Thank you.
I'm Catherine Greenwood, Principal Planning Officer at Chorley Council.
Zoe Whiteside, Head of Spatial Planning at Chorley Council.
Councillor Caleb Tomlinson, Bamber Bridge West Member, and I'm the Chair of the Planning Committee at South Ribble Borough Council.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And as always, normal standard practice, we also have a member who's just arrived late. We're very fond of him, but we would like to, would you like to tell everyone who you are?
Thank you, Chair. Officer, not member. I'm Mark Hudson, Head of Planning and Transport with the County Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Marcus. You're right. Get back in your place. Right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. So item number 3, Ben, any apologies of absence, please?
Just from Councillor David Barrow from Preston, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Item number 4, any declarations of interest? Ben? No? Anyone? No? No other declarations? No? Thank you. Okay, item number 5, minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of March 2023. I have the minutes there, they are in the pack. Do I have someone who can propose that they are an accurate account of the meeting, please? Alistair, thank you. Can I have a second there?
Second was, Chair.
Caleb, thank you for that. So these minutes are now approved. Thank you. No objections to that. Thank you. Okay, let's get into the bones of the meetings. Item number 6, preferred options, part 1 consultation. This is going to be available report. And can I ask Zoe, please, to present the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just a quick update for members in terms of the Part 1 consultation outcome. So as a team, we developed a methodology for undertaking the assembly of all of the data we received and the analysis of it So we've undertaken to input all of the data received. So members will remember that at the last meeting we talked about the a volume of representations actually were received in writing. So whilst we'd used the Citizen Space digital portal, still a number of our public, our customers wanted to submit written representation. So there's quite a volume of work in terms of inputting all of those onto Citizen Space. We then created a pro forma to collect a summary of feedback with the key areas identified. So general public feedback, statutory consultee feedback, and then identifying follow-up actions required, our response, and then the name of the analysing officer. So that as well is quite a piece of work for us to have undertaken, and the purpose of going to that level of detail on all of the representations that we've received is that will form part of the library at the inquiry at the end of this process when we're submitting to the Planning Inspectorate. So it's important that we have a record, an audit of what we've done with all those representations. What we then did was we divided the analysis of all the representations by the 3 home teams, because members will be aware we're struggling for capacity across the local plan team. So with the home teams have taken it upon themselves to do this work over and above the day job, as it were. We split up the 50 questions. So you'll remember the consultation had 50 broad questions, and we had hundreds of representations made on each of those questions. So basically the task was to analyse all of those responses. The home teams also then looked at all of the housing and employment site proposals as well, and the representations made on those. And then also we had a significant volume of representations made on excluded sites. So these are sites that we weren't taking forward. Obviously landowners, people that with an interest in sites, were asking the question, why is it excluded, and maybe challenging those. So the outcome is that we've got over 200 pro formas now, which detail all of the reps on the questions and the sites. So we've kind of whittled it down. We've come up with broad themes, key points that were repeated by different consultees. The next steps really are the home teams are now reviewing the sites submitted, and that includes any new sites that were submitted as part of Call for Sites 4. Assessing those with in accordance with the Sheila, so members were well versed in terms of what's available, suitable, achievable, not subject to national constraints. So the home teams have been doing that on those new sites, plus also any other site reps that came in. And these were things like site boundaries. So even though we'd taken a site forward, landowners or people with interest came forward and said your site boundary is incorrect, or there's an error, or it needs amending. Further detail came in around site constraints. So the EAUU, for example, their representations made details about certain sites and whether they should be in or excluded. And then we also had owners as well contacting us about ownership issues. So we've been looking at all of those matters as well. We've compiled a table of all the identified actions. So, like I said, a number of the statutory consultees provided some excellent qualitative consultee responses around policies. So we've got some really good policy wording for some of our partners that we'll be taking forward. Our new planning policy assistant, Emma, who you've met, is undertaking the analysis of the famous question 52. So this was the question at the bottom of that consultation, which sort of asks the question, any other comments, and huge amount of volume there. So Emma's working through that kind of analysis now. And those performers will then be further condensed into an outcomes report. And I suppose the point I'm making is that there's been quite a volume of work to have done. So we're hoping to bring that to you at the next JAC, obviously, which will be October. So there'll be a consultation outcomes report. It'll be for members only at that stage, because what it won't have in it is our responses to some of those issues and matters, because obviously that will depend on members' decisions around policies and sites. So when we go out for the next preferred options consultation, which will be the full draft plan, the consultation outcomes report that we publish alongside it will need to say to our the public, this is what we've done in response to your consultation responses. And because some of that is site led or site linked, we will not be able to determine that until we've really made those decisions. Also, Richard Wood Associates, you'll remember, is working with us to kind of plug the gap in terms of capacity. He's then taking those policy directions and producing them into draft policies, taking account of those representations made. So we are working through all of that work, and the home teams have done a sterling job in the absence of a number of the vacant posts that we've got on the local plan team. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Oops. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks, Zoe. Okay, does anyone have any questions for Zoe? Okay, sizable piece of work that, and got a nice mention there, Emma. So well done. I don't. You made a big impression so far. So is that okay? Any questions? Yes, of course you can. Javed,
Sound a bit silly and out of place, but brownfield sites. Is there anything the authorities can offer developers in kind help, if you would, where they'll develop brown sites, certainly in the city? On one of our visits in Rankin House, a local authority offered some developers on a massive building in the middle of the town centre. They offered them services in kind that they could offer themselves, if you would, without any monetary terms, and got the developers to develop this massive building, and it was multi-purpose use. Anything we can do in that nature?
Thank you, Javed. Zoe, do you want to? I want to comment on that, but do you want to comment? No, go on. I always like to hear you first.
You're testing me now. So in terms of a policy in the local plan that will encourage people to come forward with an existing scheme that they want to redevelop, so making use of existing brownfield land. Yes. Well, as part of plan making generally, we're expected to do that. So we're expected to kind of prioritise brownfield land. We will have to report on what kind of overall percentage of our development is on brownfield land. But certainly there's nothing to stop us going over and above and having a policy to that specific end. I can't tell you off the top of my head whether that exists in the core strategy now. It's certainly something we could look at, but I think the ideal thing would be to try and promote that before we get to the stage of a local plan, if that makes sense. Obviously, we've been out 4 times now for sites, and we have actively tried to encourage people to come forward. And quite a lot of our sites are brownfield sites. Certainly in Chorley they are. There's very, well, other than a small number of previously developed sites in the Greenbelt, they primarily are brownfield or settlement sites. But we can certainly look at that going forward. I don't know if Preston wants to add anything specifically.
Go on, Chris, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The issue certainly in Preston, and I suspect it is the same in many other places with brownfield sites, is identifying sites is no problem. We've got hundreds of sites in Preston that we've identified through our city living strategy. The issue is viability. So it's a practical issue, and it's getting that balance right between identifying sites that just simply aren't going to come forward in the local plan period, and that's when they will be tested and challenged potentially by developers wishing to build on greenfield sites. That's what they tend to do, but viability is the issue, and we're finding that without some public sector support, funding of some sort, a lot of the sites just won't come forward. Okay. Things are changing in Preston. You know, we're seeing private sector developments coming forward that haven't got any subsidy, so that's a good thing. But what we're having to compromise on is the lack of affordable homes on those sites due to viability reasons. Okay. All right, so that might be something we'll need to consider through our policy. Yeah. So we're quite clear that we're not going to be expecting affordable homes on some of these sites in order to bring them forward.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Zoe. So, Javi, okay. Just one last thing to add. In my professional life, I'm a director of construction and land, and in the Liverpool City region, there are brownfield grants which the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority offer. So in terms of, it looks like it's not available in Lancashire, I don't believe, but we are, if there's any abnormals on any sites which need treatments like you've just said, Javed, we can apply for a grant which complements the Homes England grant, which makes it, as Chris said, viable. So maybe the officers could have a look at that. I'll speak to Lizzie about some of the information we've got on that and see where that pot's come from. Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, let's keep moving. Thanks for that, Zoe. Appreciate it. Item number 7, technical consultation on the environment outcomes. And this is over to you, Carolyn.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm just going to run through briefly what the consultation is about. Under Part 6 of the LEVS, so the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, the government has introduced a new system of environmental outcomes reports, and this will replace the existing system of EIAs, environmental impact assessments, that you'll be aware of for planning applications, and the strategic environmental assessment and sustainability appraisals for local plans, the type of assessments that we go forward with. And the aim is to introduce a simpler system for assessment, But the consultation itself was very much a technical consultation on what it may include, and the detail of how the system will be taken forward is to come at a later date through regulations, which I assume will come following the bill assent. We'll wait to see on that. And they have said that they will consult on that specific detail. However, the bill is clear that the environmental outcomes report should assess the extent to which the proposed relevant consent or plan is likely to impact on the delivery of a specified environmental outcomes, increasing the extent to which a specified environmental outcome is delivered, and the steps proposed for the purposes of avoiding, mitigating, remedying or compensating for the effects of the outcome not being delivered. And I'll pick up on those bits in a little minute. The government has stated this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to deliver a brand new and improved framework, basically following us leaving the EU system. And this new system for environmental assessment will allow the government to push for better environmental outcomes, which they feel the current system isn't achieving. The new regime will require assessment against a high level of outcomes that reflect the government's ambitions towards the environment. The outcomes, I say, will be set out in the secondary legislation, and they will be supported by a suite of indicators for each outcome. And these will be stated in the guidance that is yet to be produced. And again, the government have said they will consult on those indicators. The indicators are expected to measure the change resulting from a plan or a project against an outcome, and that will be compared against baseline conditions, and those baseline conditions will have to be assessed before the applications are put in, and we'll use a lot of technical data. The methodologies for measuring the indicators, again, will be developed in consultation with specialist working groups. So that will involve organisations who currently understand how that data is produced, and again, will include local planning authorities and representatives of those, such as the Planning Officers Society. And the aim is that the environmental outcomes report will follow a standardised approach across all regimes and will be a much shorter and simpler system. The concern with the existing system is that it's not fit for purpose. There's lots of duplication between regimes. So, for instance, a site that might well be assessed in a local plan and go through a detailed assessment, then comes in for a planning application, and we go and repeat the same piece of work again. So it just takes a longer time and a duplication of effort. That's the effect that the government is wanting to remove. The environmental outcomes report must also demonstrate that consideration of reasonable alternatives has been integral to the development of the project or the plan, and this will be achieved through providing a summary of the record of decisions made around those alternatives. And this is with the aim of preventing a situation where reasonable alternatives are considered only after the development has been designed and at a stage where it's too late to impact on its design. Monitoring and mitigation are a key part of this new system, and they're to be given much greater weight through the proposals. The mitigation hierarchy of avoidance, mitigation and compensation will be enshrined within the legislation to make it clear that if you have a development and you propose mitigation against a particular issue, such as air quality, if that air quality level isn't being achieved, then there will be now a system where we can pursue remedy and make further changes to design or the process or other schemes as they can to rectify that situation. If they can't, then there are again going to be further compensation that the developer, I believe, would have to pay towards the council. Again, detail on these is to follow. The government is also committed to improving the access to data. So where the documents, currently environmental impact assessments in particular, come with a significant amount of data, the thought is the data that's supported them can be particularly useful, but it's put in such a format that it's not necessarily accessible or usable by the councils outside of determining that planning application. So the idea now is to have a standardised approach to environmental data, and all that data will be made available to the councils in a format that we can use in other areas. So, for instance, supporting development of our local nature recovery strategies. And last part about it, again, is the bill is looking to create better reporting mechanisms so we can see where change is actually happening. And the requirement is for the public authorities to report against specific standards of outcome. At the moment, I say it's not clear as to whether that will be additional burdens on us. It's something that we're waiting to see. But the consultation states that while the detail of reporting is still to be developed, the intention is to increase the accessibility by using this power to require authorities to provide annual consolidated information on how their plans are delivering an environmental outcome. One of the things it does state is that they don't want to duplicate existing monitoring frameworks, and we need to reiterate that going forward. So again, the authorities have all been preparing responses to this, and the significant detail that is still to be awaited will follow in due course, and probably towards the end of next year, we expect. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks as always, Carolyn, very thorough. Yeah, and we as a authority will be looking at our biodiversity plan, which we discussed last night coming into this. So does anyone have any questions, please, for Carolyn?
Yeah, Chair, if I can.
Okay, Caleb.
I've read your reports, and obviously it's a hard copy and I don't mind. Can't see anything about sewage being dumped into our rivers and seas and what our government are going to do about it, because, all right.
Thanks, Caleb. Carolyn?
I'd say that'll be one of those things with if a development, as I talked about that, of avoidance, mitigation and compensation. So developers who produce, obviously you'll talk about United Utilities, I'm guessing, in issues like that, where, that they are doing lots in the Northwest. I know I've had a recent meeting with them where they said they're investing the most money they have done in their AMP than they have done in previous years. But on things like schemes and developments, if they have a negative impact and they've worked with somebody to overcome those through improvements to the sewage system, for instance, and then it's having an impact, then it would be down to the developers to address those position with the United Utilities. If it's a failing of United Utilities, those type of issues are to be ironed out. But so the detail will follow, but the aim is that mitigation and then remediation, if that mitigation isn't effective, to rectify that position is what this new system is trying to achieve, so we can overcome those positions.
All right, Catherine, thanks for a detailed answer.
Thanks, Carolyn. Appreciate it. Well, it is an interesting point, isn't it? Because we're designing systems, aren't we, to take out, obviously, the sewage into the system, and the organisation has got the overall responsibility. It looks like they're failing to do their job. So that's sort of the second phase for that. But thanks, Caleb. We appreciate your question. Anyone else on any questions for Carolyn, please? No? Good. Okay. Item number 7. We've got the technical consultation on the infrastructure levy. And this is over to you, please, Catherine.
Thank you. Yeah, so there's been another government consultation recently. So this report covers the one on the infrastructure levy, which is proposed to replace the current system of the community infrastructure levy, which we have in central Lancashire, and Section 106 agreements. So it's the intention of the government that the new infrastructure levy will be more efficient and transparent than the current system. I'm just going to quickly summarise some of the key points of it. And as with Carolyn's consultation, there isn't a lot of detail in there, and that is to come, but I'll just sort of look at the key proposals within it. So they are saying that there will be 3 different routeways for securing infrastructure. So the main one will be the core levy routeway, which is similar to the system we have at the moment in central Lancashire, in that the majority of developments will be subject to the infrastructure levy. They will provide infrastructure that's integral to the development on the site, as they do at the moment. So that's internal highways, works, open spaces, and then they will also pay a contribution into the infrastructure levy. So it's similar to SIL, and that will be secured through planning conditions rather than a Section 106, which there may be some issues with, because at the moment, Section 106 is the route we would use to secure those contributions. The second routeway is the infrastructure in kind routeway. So this is where a developer would actually provide the infrastructure rather than making a payment towards infrastructure that would then be provided by somebody else. And the value of that infrastructure that they provide must equal or exceed what the equivalent infrastructure levy payment would have been for that development. And then the third routeway is a Section 106 only routeway. So they are proposing to broadly get rid of Section 106s, but they would only keep them in cases like this where it's a development that doesn't technically meet the definition of a development. So a minerals and waste site that wouldn't be subject to the levy. So any obligations would be secured through Section 106 on those sites. And as I said, the levy would operate very similar to how SIL does at the moment. The key difference being that they're proposing to charge it on the gross development value on the development upon completion, rather than on the floor space at the start of the development. They also, like local authorities, must also prepare an infrastructure delivery strategy, which is similar to the infrastructure funding statements we have at the moment, but it will have more detail in it. It will identify and plan for specific infrastructure priorities, and it will be subject to an examination. So it go through a more thorough process than our infrastructure funding statements do. In terms of affordable housing, they are proposing quite a big change to how that is delivered. At the moment, most local authorities will have a policy that sets out a proportion of dwellings that have to be affordable on sites over a particular threshold. But under the new system, they're saying that you should set a proportion of the levy that would be used for affordable housing. And then on each site, whatever equivalent value that is, you equate that to a number of affordable units. So it appears to be very complex. So for each development, you'd work out what the equivalent levy payment would be, equate that into a number of houses. So you'd have to look at what the average discount is on the particular tenure of affordable housing. So it seems like it would place a lot of burden on local authorities to get involved in all those valuations, whereas at the moment it's just a set policy. You provide that many number of affordable houses. So yeah, I think there will be a lot of objections to that proposal. But the government are saying that route will ensure that more affordable housing is provided and there'll be less viability arguments, but that's to be seen. So in terms of implementation, it is quite long term. They're saying that it's going to be at least 2030 before it's implemented, and there'll be some test and learn approaches in the meantime, probably starting in about 2025, with some local authorities testing it out before it's rolled out nationally. So obviously it's some way off, and we'd have to see what the outcome of those test and learn approaches were before we fully know what would happen. And obviously there'll be more consultations on the detail that will come out of that. Thank you.
Okay, Catherine, thank you very much. It's like another good idea by this government. Anyway, okay, any questions for Catherine? Because that is quite a fundamental change in the old system, this. And it looks very complex in terms of against what we've got now, plus say the timescale. Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. Not so much a question or a comment. I think yesterday or this week we received an update from the District Council's network, not usually a particularly left-wing organisation, and they were saying it was unworkable. So there is real concerns with how it's being done. It seems to be tinkering as opposed to actually reforming. And we put our consultation response back in, as Charlie obviously, as I imagine others have as well. And I don't hold out a lot of hope, and I think that the ground's going to shift significantly before 2030. Particularly around affordable housing, like you point out. It doesn't address the problem with that. So I think, rearranging the deck chairs. Sure.
Okay, thank you, Alistair. Good point. Probably most people agree, looking at the frowns on people's faces as that one was going through. Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think one thing that's interesting is the delivery strategy, because you've got a scenario whereby local authorities to make that decision, but is that the combined local authorities, or is it a wish list of each authority that then, because most of that infrastructure is going to have to be delivered by the upper tier, what's their role in it?
Okay, thank you. Do you want to answer to that, or is that a comment?
I'm not sure there is an answer.
I don't think there's an answer to that paper. Right, okay, any other questions on that one, please? No? Catherine, well done. And it was good to see a fair distribution tonight of the reports between the three of you. Good. Bit of balance, eh? Well done. Right, okay, let's move swiftly on to, as Caleb just said, I got my numbers wrong, so this is now item number 9, dates of future meetings. So the dates remain of the JAC meetings for this year are included in the agenda, with the next one on the 3rd of October being hosted by Preston. So can't wait. Okay, item number 10, which is exclusion of the press and public. The remaining items on the agenda will be discussed confidentially. Do I have a proposer to vote to exclude the press and the public for the remainder of the meeting? Alistair's proposed, Caleb seconded. So that's confirmed. Thank you, everyone. So what we'll do now, we'll just take a moment so everyone wants a comfort break, or we just stop the YouTube